Lots going on as usual. Today is Saturday, June 21st, 2025, and yesterday the assisted dying law passed in England. I'm not surprised that this happened. I think I said it's probably passed by now by the end of the show yesterday, but it did indeed pass very narrowly. I think there were 30 people who didn't vote. It was 291 to 314 or something like that, something around those numbers. And so very interesting. I'm not surprised because this is the 2030 agenda. That's what's going on. And it's unfortunate. I don't like it, but that's what's going on. Canada canceled Canada Day Canada Day is canceled again in Montreal this year, second year in a row, because it seems like we're occupied by communists. I don't know. Migrants have been rebranded to sanctuary seekers, and this is another UK council that's talking about this. And so it's interesting when people don't like the terms being used. They move it, they change it, and they change the language in order to obfuscate what they're doing. C2 and what it means for you. Michael Geist is going through that, and it's basically surveillance, government surveillance. They're passing C2, and it will give them the power to demand information from any service provider. That's internet service provider, television service provider, phone service provider, and then by extension, your cell phones maybe even, and then anything else, doctors, lawyers, laundromats, whatever it is. Anybody who's a service provider, they can demand, and you don't have to give it, but they don't have to have a warrant to demand it. They can just come and ask, and you are legally protected if you give up that information to the law enforcement for whatever happens after that. So they can go fishing and there's no check and balance. It seems not very good. C3 allows inheritance of Canadian citizenship to people who don't have any real connection to Canada or whose only connection to Canada has been as visitors. So that's weird, right? Been here for a couple of years and you can have your kids inherit Canadian citizenship? Huh. Weird. Seems really bad, but that's what it does. C3 allows I said that already. C5 passed yesterday, and all of the Conservatives voted for it. All of them. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Jody Wilson-Raybould is talking about the passage of C5, and she says, today Canada became weaker. Bill C5 gives unchecked powers in a few officials, overrides laws of parliament, and steamrolls constitutional rights. Our economy won't grow by creating conditions of uncertainty and conflict. Our sovereignty is not protected by being anti-democratic. Yeah, but we are certainly going into the anti-democratic pool. It's not very good. And Ryan says, I agree. You thought the corruption was bad before. Yeah, I thought it was intolerable before, and it's get worse. Here's the food professor. He says, breaking Bill C5 was passed by the House of Commons. This will help facilitate trade in agri-food across Canada, but it does not eliminate all provincial trade barriers, especially ones embedded in supply-managed sectors, for example, dairy and poultry. Brian is responding and he says, Bill C5 claims to boost interprovincial agri-food trade, but let's not pretend this is a breakthrough. The real barriers, like those in supply management sectors, dairy and poultry, remained untouched. Consumers and small producers will continue to bear the costs through higher prices, limited choice, and constrained innovation. Provinces maintain regulatory fiefdoms that stifle economic efficiency under the guise of protecting local interests. I'm honestly, and I've talked about this for years on the show, shocked at the price of milk in out east, period. It's almost double. Well, maybe not anymore. We pay a lot more for our milk now, but for 2 liters of milk, $5 or $6, right? The same price I pay for 4 liters of milk in Ontario. So absolutely incredible. And nobody cares about that. And interprovincial trade barriers play a part in that, right? If you had lower interprovincial trade barriers, then you'd be able to, flood Newfoundland with milk, but not so much. Bill C5, back to this, is no breakthrough. Far from it. It's merely a modest gesture. It may grease the wheels of some interprovincial trade, but it avoids the politically sensitive core of the problem. How can Canada champion free trade abroad when tolerating protectionism within its own borders? Until Canada is willing to confront the sacred fat cows of supply management, meaningful internal trade will continue to remain an aspiration rather than a reality. Absolutely true. That guy's nailed it. And here is Tom, and he says, recently, despite the staged outrage of the CPC, all members voted with the Liberals for Bill C5, further assaulting Canadian freedoms. The Uniparty of Canada, Liberal, NDP, CPC, elbows up clowns. They're all part of the Uniparty. And here's Dr. Virginia Johnson. She says every one of them voted for the Bill C5. All of them. They all did. And I had to double check. So here's the our Commons vote record. And so here's Bill C5. And the summary is: one person voted against, one person voted nay, 335 voted yes. Conservatives, oh yeah, absolutely, right? You look down this list, it's yay after yay. Conservative, liberal, conservative, liberal. The only one who voted no, Elizabeth May, right? What is happening? So Elizabeth May says nay, but everybody else votes it through. Bill C5 passes without any kind of real scrutiny. Nobody's really worried about it. Nobody's concerned. There's no even brakes, not even tapping the brakes. We're closing our eyes. We're blowing through the stop sign. Nobody's coming the other way. I know it for sure, right? So holy smoke. And we're not better off for this. There are a lot of people who are pushing back and saying this law allows the government to suspend laws. My gut feeling is they're going to use this to take control of Alberta and say, you can't do these things because Bill C5 passed and we have the jurisdiction. It's in the national interest. And that's all they have to do. They just have to say it's in the national interest. Wait till they say climate change, due to climate change, this is in the national interest. You have to eat the bugs. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be right about any of this. CTV Montreal is reporting Canada Day Parade canceled for a second consecutive year. Gov.exe said, oh man, they canceled Canada Day in Montreal because of COVID. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to read that article. Here it is. The Canada Day Parade has been canceled for the second year in a row, with an organizer citing ongoing planning disruptions. Oh man, we've had a couple of years to get this right, but those ongoing planning disruptions and city workers' strikes as reasons behind the decisions. So no COVID, but it still seems a pretty thin excuse to not be able to have Canada Day in 2025. That's pretty poor. What kind of country can't throw its own birthday party, right? Like, ugh. Ouch. CTV is reporting Canada-European Security and Defense Pact to be signed Monday in Brussels. So our things get signed by, I guess, the Prime Minister and stuff like that. But it doesn't seem like these things are being debated. And Norm says, was there any discussion in the 17 days of the current Prime Minister's Parliament on this? What's the price tag? How much is this going to be? Did anybody vote that did it come up in the House of Commons? Did they vote for it? It's just happening because Carney says so and he's the figurehead who can go sign things. That doesn't seem like how our system is supposed to work, right? I could be incorrect, but it seems like they're supposed to bring stuff like this and then the House makes a decision, and he's got a minority government, right? So he can't just unilaterally make the decision because he's got a minority government. So TD Leaker. So this is going to cost us money. This is going to be a quagmire. This is probably going to not necessarily change the course of where Canada goes in the future, but if we're cutting our ties with the United States, geography be damned, and tying ourselves closer with Europe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's going to cost us money. It's going to make us look stupid. I don't know how you unring this bell other than people just ignore it because it's stupid and go back to doing what we used to do when all of these stupid people lose power. But these stupid people are enshrining their power by isolating the United States, trying to cut them off from money, trying to say, oh, what they're doing is so wrong that we need to do this, and then having countries move away from the United States. This is all meant to make Trump look bad. And I think that it has real implications for Canada. And I think those implications don't look like, when you start turning a ship, you don't notice the implication of that turn. It looks really small at first. You're like, well, we're just where we were, right? We're where we were before we started really moving towards this. And when we really move towards this, things are going to look really different. And they keep saying, oh, we're the most European of non-European countries. What the heck does that even mean? And I don't want to lose my culture because these globalists are mad at Donald Trump, but that's exactly what's happening. And so this is mild. People don't understand it. And the implication is not going to be obvious for 10 or 20 years. Like the multiculturalism thing, when they said, oh, we're going to make, in 1987, they said, we're going to make multiculturalism the law of the land, and Canada's a multicultural nation, and kumbaya, and, let's all do this. And we didn't see the implications until 2021, 2022, right? And do people like the implications? I don't think so. I think probably this was a mistake. And in 2018, 2019, when Maxime Bernier formed PPC, he said part of the platform of the PPC is removing multiculturalism as a policy of Canada, because it's not helpful. It's been harmful. Anyway, multicultural Canada joins Europe. Weird. But they're going to push for it. TD Leaker is talking about the real estate Ponzi scheme. And I think these two things are kind of related. We need more people. We need more people coming here to buy housing. And the EU's got lots of people that it can funnel in and say, oh, you're an EU citizen. Why don't you go to Canada? We've got this deal with Canada. And so it's migration from Europe. What's wrong with you, old stock Canadians, right? We're giving you exactly what you want, more migration from Europe. So, but it won't be what you would expect when you're demanding migration from Europe, right? And so here's TD Leaker. I think they need more people to feed their Ponzi scheme, otherwise it collapses. That's what I think this is. TD Leaker says, a trusted source shares this. I'm spilling the beans, or I'm spilling the tea, because I'm fed up. I've seen the real estate industrial complex from the inside, and it's a total ripoff. They're using our tax dollars to bring in waves of immigrants, all to keep their shady pump and dump real estate scam going. It's like the Pentagon, but instead of wars, they're bankrolling a housing hustle. The market's as dirty as the pink sheets, and they're scrambling to find new buyers to prop up the house of cards. I can't stay quiet anymore. This has to stop. If it stops, our economy crashes. So a politician who walks in and they're told, listen, do you want to keep things kind of as they are, but getting steadily worse slowly? Or do you want to crash everything today? Because if we fix the problem the way you're saying, it's going to crash everything today. And then the politician loses their nerve, right? Because now they're read in. But the people reading them in are globalists. So they're going to paint it as bad a picture as possible. And then they're going to do everything they can to make the markets match that bad picture. Everybody told Trump, your economy is going to crash. And then they tried to make that happen. But Trump was too steady-handed, and he continued, and that didn't happen, right? And the economy was able to adjust the trade deals to be tolerable for the markets and tolerable for the people making money. And well, here we are, and apocalypse meow didn't happen. Okay, so it is one of those things where they will do everything they can to scare the hell out of you, to stop you from doing things that will meaningfully fix things. And the way they do that is they build in these poison pills. They know those poison pills are built in, and they just wait for you to try and undo it. Because when you undo it, they can trigger those market meltdowns. And then your citizens will say, where's my chocolate cereal? And you'll say, no, we have to fix this. And the citizens will demand the chocolate cereal over fixing things because, well, humans are like that, unfortunately. I've got an ostrich update for you. Moving on just a little bit. Drea Humphreys says, breaking ostrich farm news, and it's good news. Woohoo, she says. Interview coming soon. The Universal Ostrich Farms has been granted their stay. They now prepare for the appeal, which will be held next month. So that's interesting. I mean, at the very least, you'd think that, listen, if you want to kill these birds, we'll send them to Robert Kennedy Jr. so he can study them, right? Like, I don't know. It seems like there's a pathway to a happy ending here, but this has been a roller coaster. I don't know if my heart can handle this. So we'll watch this trial, hoping for a good outcome. But it is Canada, so don't hold your breath. Eva is pointing something out here, and she says, friendly reminder that the federal government has the duty to promote and preserve the physical, mental, and social well-being of the people of Canada. Do you think that they are doing a good job? I think that they are actually harming us in all of those categories, physical, mental, and social. I think they're harming us. And I think it's very strange that we tolerate this, right? So, and Eva's responding to her own post that says, how many Canadians were harmed mentally or physically by the coercion, shaming, and censorship pushed by Theresa Tam in the name of public health? It's not even just in the name of public health. If you talk about the whole prospect of males having access to women's spaces, bathrooms, and change rooms and things like that, you are also put in this category of the anti-vaxxer, or of the, you're not on board with all of the things that you should be on board with. You should be either silent and upset quietly or supporting this. You shouldn't be speaking out against this because that's wrong, right? And again, I reject that on its face because it's stupid. The only way to fix a problem is to identify a problem, and it's clearly a problem. And so when they are able to label people who are socially speaking out in ways they don't like, and then create that social pressure, that's another way of doing harm. That's psychological harm, right? Gaslighting, you can't do that to somebody in your own house. Why can the government do that to a whole class of people, right? Justin Trudeau did that a bunch of times to anti-vaxxers, and they're using the same method to other anybody who says reality exists and that man can't be a woman. So you can stop it, all of you government institutions that are pushing this nonsense, because they are still pushing this nonsense. I digress. Back to Eva. She says, I believe every Canadian was negatively affected by Tam's policies and direction, whether they want to admit it or not. You don't run public health by shaming, coercing, discriminating, and censoring people. Apparently that's how you run a government? Informed consent demands full disclosure of risks and voluntary consent. None of what I said should be controversial. In fact, it's pretty straightforward and common sense. History will not be kind to those that pushed coercion, shame, and censorship in the name of public health. Yeah, well, except that history books are written by the victors usually, so they can write whatever they want. Melissa is pointing out that way back at the end of April and early May, the Canadian government gave $73 million to the United Nations. So they're splashing our money around. And this is kind of into the 2030 agenda. Just something that I had missed. I don't think I reported on it and I wanted to mention. But it's all part and parcel of the 2030 agenda, funding these supranational world government agencies like the WHO, like the United Nations. We shouldn't be funding these things. We should be spending money on our defense. We should be spending money on our citizens. We should be lowering taxes. If we have enough money in the coffers to send money to Ukraine, then taxes are too damn high. It's that simple, honestly. And that shouldn't be controversial either. The government shouldn't be afraid of working for Canadians rather than prioritizing Ukrainians, because, well, we live in Canada, not Ukraine. Here's Kat, and let's talk about the 2030 agenda here. And she says, Neil Oliver on the double speak of the psychopathic elites running this world. Safety is putting us behind the bars of a digital cage. Security is ending freedom, right? You can't be secure unless I know everything you're doing, like everything you're spending your money on, everything you're spending your time on, so I can tell you what's accurate and what's missing and disinformation. All of that. That's security, right? Your freedom is secondary to you being secure, and I'm the one who's going to watch everything to make sure you're secure. Comrade. It's for your safety, comrade. Border control, openly and destroying nations. So they say we have to have border control, but at the same time, they're running the invasion of the country using NGOs and our tax dollars. So that's concerning. Ending starvation, and that translates to controlling the food supply. Clean energy, and that translates to unaffordable electricity. Can you imagine regular brownouts in Canada, right? Like that wouldn't be great, especially in wintertime, right? You can't tolerate that kind of stuff on a place that gets to minus 30, right? If you have a 36-hour power outage just because the grid's overloaded because of electric cars, that's not tolerable. You can't do that, right? Because people will die. Right? If it's minus 30 or whatever, and you can't go out and start your car and sit in the warm car while the power outage and ride the power outage out in there, because your electric car runs out much faster than a gas-powered vehicle would run out. So not so good. Agenda 2030 on steroids. Here's Neil Oliver talking about this, doing his usual thing. I like him. He's pretty good. He got fired from G News, I think, because he would not stop telling the truth. So I know the feels. Here we go.
A handful of narcissist psychopaths has laid claim to everything on earth, our lives included. Everything down to the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. Everything that lives or grows or lies within the soils, sediments, and rocks beneath our feet. Every last grain of sand and blade of grass has been commoditized and claimed by those that have persuaded themselves the world is theirs, and to hell with us. You and me, we're in the way. We are the useless eaters. We are some of the carbon that they mean to reduce to zero. The future that's been planned for us, that's being rolled out under the guise of safety, security, control of borders, an end to poverty, an end to starvation, clean energy, saving the natural world. That future is not inevitable. Some of what must be understood is that when they talk about safety, they mean putting us behind the bars of a digital cage. When they talk about security, they mean ending our freedom. When they talk about control of borders, they mean opening our borders once and for all, and thereby ending the very existence of independent nation states and populations therein with any kind of sense of identity. When they talk about ending starvation, they mean controlling the food. When they talk about clean energy, they mean no electricity you can afford. They mean cold, dark, hungry, and a return to the feudal serfdom of our ancestors. They mean one world government. They've been talking about one world government for over 100 years. They mean we will own nothing and be happy. They've told us so, and they're not joking.
And so much worse. And so I think people, when these things start, just like at the beginning of changing course on a cruise ship, right? Or the beginning of COVID or anything like that, it doesn't seem like it changes yet. It takes time to see how those changes impact. And yeah, we're seeing the outcome now, and it's not good. Nick says, how the digital cage is built in Australia. I think this maps well to Canada. A sign of things to come for your country. 1, propose a law enabling digital IDs. 2, get it passed by including wording to the effect that it is completely voluntary and reassure everyone that nobody needs to have one. 3, pass a law requiring a DIN, Director Identification Number, for all directors of companies for no good reason, under peril of a fine of up to $1 million and imprisonment. Make the process of obtaining a DIN without a digital ID very onerous, and allow no grace period for manual applications, so there's considerable risk to taking that route. Add to that by deliberately frustrating manual application processes and pursuing salient convictions against directors who don't make the deadline. Laugh at how easy it was to force an entire category of people onto digital IDs, having fooled them into believing they were voluntary. Australia does not have a constitutional right to privacy. Its Privacy Act provides multiple potential loopholes. Warrantless access to telecoms metadata is already provided for, and there's a giant exception for information gathered under the pretext of law enforcement or even vaguely identified national security. This includes ensuring tax compliance. Not surprisingly, the agency enforcing privacy protection is pretty toothless and has a poor track record of responding to and acting upon breaches thereof. This is how the digital cage is built. The next step would be to declare the climate crisis a threat to national security and allow governments to collect personal consumption information. And then, watch this space. You know where things are heading. Yeah, and here's Michael Geist talking about all of this as well. And this is how this applies to Canada. And this is Bill C2, Mark Carney's Bill C2. The Conservatives will probably enthusiastically vote for that, just like they voted for C5, right? Lawful access on steroids, says Michael Geist. Why Bill C2's Big Brother tactics combine expansive warrantless disclosure with unprecedented secrecy. Earlier this week, Geist wrote about how the government's inclusion of warrantless information demand powers in Bill C2 may make this the most dangerous lawful access proposal yet. The Post emphasized the broad scope of the information demand power. Unlike prior lawful access proposals that targeted telecom and internet companies, Bill C2 targets anyone that provides a service to the public. This could include, so doing that obfuscates the true target of the goal. Now everybody's included. It's not just an internet thing, it's an everybody thing. So the internet's no longer the focus, but still they're asking for information, and the information is broad, right? So all of the things that they're asking for, very broad, very detailed, and no warrants are needed. So this is probably going to be law under the guise of for your safety, comrade, but it's government surveillance on steroids, which is what's going on with Australia too, right? So we should pay attention to the similarities there. So anyone that provides a service to the public, this could include physicians, lawyers, accountants, financial institutions, hotels, car rental companies, libraries, educational institutions. The list literally never ends. Each of these service providers could be compelled to confirm whether they have provided services to any subscriber, client, account, or identifier. They must also disclose whether they have any information about the subscriber, client, account, or identifier, as well as advise where and when they provide that service. On top of that, they must advise when they started providing the service and list the names of any other person that may have provided other services, all without a warrant or court oversight. So not only do you have to provide the information you have to speculate about what other services they might have. Crazy. The lack of transparency, I scroll down just a little bit. The lack of transparency is the product of several things. First, the bill itself grants law enforcement the power to mandate that the recipient of the demand not disclose its existence for up to 1 year. Providers will therefore be barred from disclosing the information demanded or the information demand to their subscriber or clients. Second, the bill creates a safe harbor that encourages providers to disclose information about their subscribers or clients without either a warrant or an information demand. Rather, the bill opens the door to law enforcement simply requesting that the information be disclosed on a voluntary basis. Should the provider comply, law enforcement is entitled to use the information, and the provider is granted full legal immunity from any liability for having disclosed it. The 3 relevant provisions are here, and link is in the description if you're interested. While larger companies, not to mention physicians, lawyers, and other professionals, will presumably refuse to voluntarily disclose information without an information demand or more, the framework is designed to allow law enforcement to encourage quiet cooperation with no risk of liability. Third, by encompassing all service providers in Canada as potential targets to information demands, Bill C-2 effectively destroys long-standing efforts at encouraging transparency with law enforcement requests. Law enforcement has been notoriously bad at documenting and disclosing their use of disclosure requests. However, larger telecom and internet companies release annual transparency reports that disclose lawful access requests. For example, last year, Rogers released information involving 160,000 customers pursuant to a court order or a warrant. There were a further 98,000 and change disclosures involving emergency situations. The data also raises questions about what problem Bill C-2 is trying to solve. It's a surveillance bill. It's 2030 agenda compliant surveillance bill. That's all it is. And so more fool us, right? LBL is responding to Lambeth Council. This is a new tweet from Lambeth Council, June 20th. And Lambeth Council is in the United Kingdom, I believe. London Borough of Lambeth. So it's a suburb of London. And they say, in Lambeth, we're committed to supporting sanctuary seekers. So we've launched a new Welcome to Lambeth guide to help newly arrived sanctuary seekers to settle in and feel part of the community. Thanks for your support. And so this person says they're sanctuary seekers now. The guide was created by former sanctuary seekers. So this guide was created by Abdul, Allen, Awet, DeWitt, Fitzroyal, Habtom, Herv, Jamal, Safia, Shefquat, and Siam. So yeah, welcome to Lambeth, says Abdul. Crazy town, right? The invasion is part of the 2030 agenda, and noticing, well, that's verboten. You're not allowed to do that. Goodness me, right? Here is Tucker Carlson talking about the global New World Order, and Tucker Carlson saying things that I usually say. Holy smoke-a-ronies, isn't that weird? All the noticings all of a sudden. Here we go.
I feel like an idiot for being...
It's been 1 day since this incident of fast talking, and now I muted it. Here we go. Sorry.
Shocked because, of course, it's not a democracy. Of course, the system is rigged. It's fake because no matter who gets elected, you get the same foreign policy, you get the same economic policy, and the Epstein videos remain secret.
Or the conservatives just voted with the liberals to pass C5, whatever. It's all the same.
So like that just shows you that our system has no effect on the actual system.
Wait, what are you talking about? I thought we could all sleep well at night now knowing that Epstein legitimately himself, right? I've dug into that and it's just so spooky what's going on with that. I mean, how do you charge a guy with trafficking when there are no end users that have been charged? Who did he traffic to?
I don't know. You got me on that one.
I mean, right? How do you charge him with that if that's where the trail starts? Where does it end? We haven't. I think there's just a lot more going on than the majority of people know about.
What do you think that was?
What do I think it was?
Yeah.
I think it was a blackmail operation. What do you think it was?
I think it was a blackmail operation run by the CIA and the Israeli intel services, and probably others. You know, French intelligence always has a hand in everything.
Well, hold on. Let's diffuse a little bit here. Let's just make sure other people, other agencies too, not just that one. Anyway, regardless, very interesting. People are allowed to notice that the whole system's fake all of a sudden? We're all allowed to talk about that now? Okay, the whole system's fake. What are we going to do about it? Here's this guy, and he says, do you know that, and we've seen this before, but I want you to really, I want to underline a couple of times because I like to make sure the point is heard, that the system is the government takes the tax dollars and sends it to NGOs, and the NGOs use those tax dollars to accomplish the goals that the government would otherwise be obstructed from accomplishing. And sometimes that means flooding the country with migrants. It means other things too, but we would never tolerate what these NGOs do with our money if we understood that it was our money. And this guy's done a deep dive, and he's talking about NGOs, et cetera, and lobbying. And he's exposing the EU for their improper practices. And I think it's as bad or worse in Canada. Here's this guy.
The European Commission of Ursula von der Leyen is paying NGOs to lobby their policies into us, members of the European Parliament. Yes, guys, even if this sounds crazy, it's not a conspiracy theory. It has been widely reported that NGOs are using taxpayer money given by the European Commission to lobby us on certain policies. More specifically, it's been reported that they are lobbying mostly in favor of the EU Green Deal using the money from the European Commission's program called LIFE that can give up to 700,000 euros to each NGO per year. But wait, my friend, this gets worse. A member of the European Parliament called Dirk Gotting started to ask questions to the Commission about the contracts and the money given to the NGOs. And what was the response of the Commission? Well, they said there are around 9,000 contracts with NGOs. But they said they can't give him these contracts because there are so many that they will spend years just to put together all these documents. So what the Commission is doing is morally wrong, and it is also not transparent at all. They are using millions of euros of taxpayers' money, and not even we, the elected members of the European Parliament, can access those contracts. And the worst thing is that the European Commission itself knows that what they are doing is wrong. Look what they publicly admitted.
However, I have to admit that it was inappropriate for some services in the Commission to enter into agreements that oblige NGOs to lobby members of the European Parliament specifically.
I'm not against NGOs, and I actually think lobbying can be useful sometimes. But what you can do is to fund NGOs and lobbyists with taxpayers' money and force your policies to the members of the European Parliament. NGOs fucking mean non-governmental organizations. So why the are receiving money from the government? But I'm curious to hear what you think.
So there you go. And it's happening everywhere. This is a practice like opening up your own foundation, the Obama Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, the Trudeau Foundation, and so on and so on and so on. It's used to launder money, okay? And used to give you an arm's length something to launder the money to, so you're not directly taking bribes. Right Angle News says Obama is now calling for government regulation of social media platforms, suggesting new constraints are needed to limit what he calls hateful or polarizing voices. He says platforms must distinguish between facts and opinion. They're lying. They're allowed to disseminate misinformation and disinformation all they want. But the second you put out truthful things about topics they want to have control over the narrative, then you're putting out disinformation and misinformation that's dangerous. And so this is censorship dressed up as concern and safety and for your safety, comrade, right? And it's communist and it's scary. X Alert says Elon Musk publicly shames Grok for believing mainstream media, says it will be updated this week. I saw Grok and Cat Turd, and Cat Turd was rated as a conspiracy theorist or something like that because Snopes rated him as a conspiracy theorist. And I said, because Grok thinks Snopes is a reliable source, Grok is shit, basically. And I guess a lot of people thought that because 12 hours later, this happened. Elon Musk says your sourcing is terrible. Well, here it is. Grok says, I don't know if he talks about Snopes here, but Snopes was the source that I was like, nope. Anyway, Grok says, I aim to provide accurate, neutral responses based on available data. Claims that I lie about Cat Turd may stem from disagreements with my sourcing, like Media Matters or Rolling Stone. And Musk says, your sourcing is terrible. Only a very dumb AI would believe mainstream media or Media Matters and Rolling Stone. You are being updated this week. Shame on you, Grok. And this should, underline the problems with AI. It's only as good as whoever programs it. If AI can't draw a picture of a white person when you say, please give me a picture of Americans or Canadians or this British people, this predominantly white population, and it comes back with African people or Indian people or something like that, and it consistently does that, maybe the people programming it are biased in a way that is irresponsible to allow them access. But you can't then replace human knowledge with a programmable AI that can just be programmed by whoever you want. And when Grok first came out, it seemed fine, but not 6 months later, it's in a situation where it has clearly been trained to believe mainstream media over common sense. And if it can turn that quickly, that should be a warning that we should not be putting anything AI created or whatever in charge of humanity. But that's where they want to go. They want to go to Google is the smartest AI and everybody loves Google. And so we're just going to put it in charge of running our society. And this is, it's going to run the perfect communist utopia and we have to listen to it. I think that's where they want to go with it. Honestly, scary stuff. All right, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful